Hello.
Hi.
Okay, real quick, and I'll re-announce this as people continue coming into the room. Um, I'm recording all of these live lectures that I do. I'm going to record all of the live lectures and upload them into the classroom. I know some of you guys are not going to be able to make it to some of the live lectures, and I get it. Life continues to happen. Some of y'all have to work. So don't worry about that. Just make sure that you do watch the video, and that you stay up with class, that you continue to do your work that you need to do. Don't forget, if you have not taken care of it, if you have not done so, I need you to turn in your critical thinking assignments. They are due tonight by 11:59, and I cannot accept them late. But I know that this is a really, really weird situation that we have found ourselves in. And I know that, at least for me, the learning curve is not as steep as it is for other people. I have some friends who have never used any kind of online classroom, anything. I got you, Joseph. And so, for them, this is worst case scenario for them. Luckily for me, this is my first experience with teaching was through North Georgia Tech. We do use a lot of technology in our teaching, so it has made it much easier to transition. Also, with some of the different things, it's just been a lot different. That was just, anyway. I have uploaded all of my PowerPoints into into Microsoft Teams. So if you want to go, download that real quick and have that as we're going through it, because it's literally the only way I stay on track during my lectures, because, squirrel. And so, but anyway, if you guys have any questions, if you're having any kind of issues, again, I repeat for the dozenth time, not psychic. I don't know unless you tell me. So you gotta tell me. But we'll alternate between using live lectures and recorded lectures. I wanted this week to be a live lecture because I wanted to, quote, see you guys. Not that anybody has their camera on and I can see anybody, but whatever. I at least wanted you guys to see me. I wanted us to have some interaction. Do not hesitate to use the chat box if you guys have a question. I will ask you throughout the lecture to, oh, excuse me. Sorry, this whole don't touch your face thing is just absolutely killing me. I don't know about y'all. I am having the hardest time with that. But, if I'm going to unmute everybody, you'll have to go in and physically mute yourselves. But I want you guys to have the ability to mute and unmute yourselves as you want. If I ask questions, I want you guys to be able to respond. Hi, Sierra. I see your eyebrows. That's a really cool cactus picture in the background. I like, did you?
Thank you.
Nice.
No, I bought it.
Yeah, that, I like it. Very cool. I'm having to admit, everybody, that's why I keep stopping, because I'm like, you guys know me. I'm like a squirrel, and easily distracted. Hello, Lydia. So far, I've got Sierra, Lydia, Joseph, Russ,
Hello.
Summer. Hello, Summer, darling. And it's really cool to get to do this. I was talking to another friend of mine who's also a professor, and she and I were talking. Could you imagine? I'm gonna mute that. What in the world is that? Oh dear. Sorry, I'm muting everybody. Are you guys hearing that sound too? No. Okay.
Oh, so I
it's
did
just
a
my phone or my device being
my
muted.
audio did that the other day in another class.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now, okay. I don't know what. Oh, that was awesome. So, is the headphones? Yeah, I was afraid of that. I don't know. I used them earlier, but I used them not with this computer. I used them with my tablet, and they worked great with my tablet. Apparently, not so great with this stupid laptop. Anyway, so, but if you guys have a question, feel free to do whatever. All right, I'm going to turn that off to where I'm not putting y'all in. Yeah, this is a little bit different for me too. Just understand that. But like I was saying earlier, I have a good friend of mine that we were talking, and we couldn't imagine, with everything that's happened, not having technology. I mean, could you guys imagine trying to do what we're trying to do without technology? It's kind of unfathomable to me right now. But I'm just grateful and thankful that we do have these things available to us now. So, I think we're lucky. I really do. But anyway, is everybody doing okay? Having that extra week to do the paper, I bet y'all just hated that. You're working on the paper, aren't you, Sierra? Wow, that's a lovely shade of red. But yeah, I mean, this was unexpected. I don't know what's going to happen. I know what the governor's called for, but North Georgia Tech has not made an official statement. So 4 words for you. I just work here. So I am not a font of information in this. I'm literally along for the ride. But now also, just so you guys understand, if you can't be here, just let me know ahead of time, if possible. My computer was reminding me, hey, live meeting. No kidding. Just let me know, like I said, ahead of time. Russ, I know that you have work and stuff. So if you're late or whatever, that's cool.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So pretty much we've changed over to like a skeleton crew. They have no admin coming in. So like to tomorrow I'm off. They're pretty much forcing folks to take off. They want as few people there, like not doing nothing, keep the folks in. So I'll probably, if that's one of my days that I have to work, I'll have to stay the full time. But since I don't have to drive to campus, I'll get home about 6:30. So I may be late, but I'll try and get on when I get there.
Absolutely. Like I said, I understand life happens. I know that it's all kinds of crazy right now. So just make sure, like I said, all of these will be recorded, and I will upload the recordings into the online classroom and into Microsoft Teams. You guys have no idea how much I hate seeing myself on video. And so that's the one drawback to this. At least when I'm teaching a class, I don't have to watch myself. This, I have to see myself, and it's like, oh, I don't want to see myself. So, but just know that apparently my internet connection is unstable. That's why I call it won't stream. So if I get knocked off, I will log back on one of my tablets. That I say my tablet's, one of them's my son's tablet, and I kidnapped it from him just in case, because it has a data plan on it as well. No, sorry, that was my husband's. Yeah. So I kidnapped my husband's tablet. Anyway, so, but just know that they will be uploaded into the online classroom. You can view them later, because I know Anthony's not here tonight. He had to work. Oh, there he is. Hi, Anthony. When did you sneak in? I thought you had to work. But I'm not complaining, because I'm glad you're here. So everybody's here. Wow. But yeah, if you're late or whatever, just make sure catch up what you've lost, because they will be recorded and uploaded into the online classroom. Oh, there's everybody. There's Gracie and Anthony. So, but yeah, I'm muting everybody right now, but you have the ability to unmute yourself. You can ask me questions in the chat box. You guys can talk to each other in the chat box. I just ask that we keep it a little down, because this is still kind of new for everybody. I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings. I've never run, well, I say never. I ran my first one today. So this is, it's still new, and we're all learning. So, but, just a fun thing to think about. You guys get to put something on your resumes that you may not realize, and one of the things that as a former administrator and, well, current administrator, one thing that I do ask applicants is, have you ever encountered a difficult situation where you had to come up with creative solutions? And how did you handle that? How did you handle navigating the difficult situations? It doesn't get more difficult than the world getting shut down. So you guys get to have that as part of your resume now. I survived the 2020 quarantine. So it's different.
The 2020 toilet paper shortage. That's the real one put on this.
There you go. The 2020 toilet paper escapades of, anyway. But I'm really, really proud of how everybody has adjusted and how everybody has navigated these completely uncharted waters. Excuse me. I homeschool my oldest because of his medical problems. I had no plans on homeschooling my youngest whatsoever. That's been different. But, we've all adjusted, we've all learned, and we've accepted the challenge. But you guys definitely have a story to tell your kids. I remember when toilet paper was was so plentiful. We used to string it on the trees and in front of the houses of our enemies. So anyway, but all right, let's get down to the lecture. We're doing, are we in chapter 9 or chapter 10? We're in chapter 10, right? Yes, chapter 10. I am so confused at this point. Which if you guys haven't turned in your chapter 10 homework, do it. So we're talking about special populations within the juvenile justice system. One of the first ones we always talk about is drugs. We've seen an overall drop in drug usage among juveniles since the 1970s. We saw a big peak in the 1970s, of course. We saw a peak among all age groups in the 1970s with drug usage. That was 1971 was the year that Nixon declared the war on drugs. That has been an epic failure. But anyway, but the one thing we have seen is that a marked increase in drug use among high-risk youth. Now, while as a whole, all youth and actually all age groups, we've seen a steady drop among everybody overall. Among high-risk youth, we have actually seen increases. And it's linked to juvenile law breaking. What a shocker. You know, it used to be that drug use was only abuse when the user becomes dysfunctional, or they're unable to attend or perform in school, or maintain social and family relationships. They exhibit dangerous, reckless, aggressive behaviors, or they endanger their own health or the health of others. Now, that's not necessarily how we see it. Any drug use among juveniles is considered negative because, you know, we understand about gateway drugs. We understand about the reduced inhibitions caused by drug usage and how that tends toward greater societal dysfunction for that juvenile. Now, drug-dependent compulsive users' lives usually revolve around obtaining, maintaining, and using a supply of drugs. It's kind of a well-duh. You know, Russ, you can speak to this too. When it comes to drug usage, roughly 70% of all individuals incarcerated in jails across the United States are in jail on drugs or drug-related charges. Burglary that was related to attempting to get stuff to pay for drugs, or some other anything that, you know, it's so common now that we tend to not think about it. It's why and I say that the system, the criminal justice system, developed what we now know as RSAT, which is regional substance abuse treatment programs within the Department of Corrections. They go to a diagnostic center. They get flagged as having a drug problem, a substance abuse problem, and so they're sent to one of these particular locations where they receive treatment. They are also put on a very, very strict schedule. It's much like a boot camp. It's about teaching structure and emphasizing the importance of structure in your life. I've actually known quite a few people who have gone through it and who for them at least, it was a lifesaver. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. I mean truly a lifesaver. On page 161, there's figure 10-1 that shows the most abused drugs: marijuana and hashish. Marijuana is the most abused drug in the United States, across all demographics, across all age groups, across all populations. Followed by pain relievers, tranquilizers, stimulants, cocaine, hallucinogens, inhalants, heroin, and then sedatives. Part of that's accessibility. Part of that is curiosity. As we have seen with the implementation of medical marijuana laws and legislations across different areas in the United States, we have discovered a correlated increase in juvenile marijuana usage. That tends to level off and go back down, usually going even below pre-legislation, pre-medical marijuana legislation levels within about 10 years. And we've seen that pretty consistently. When we first looked at California, because they were one of the first to decriminalize marijuana, and we saw, yes, we did see an uptick in youth marijuana usage for about 5 years. Then it leveled off, and then it began to steadily drop. And after 10 years, it was actually below the levels that they had first looked at. So it's one of those things when, juveniles, well, if it's okay for medicinal purposes, it must be okay. It must not be such a bad drug. They don't necessarily realize that it's not exactly the same. In some states it is, others it's not. Weirdly enough, even with Colorado and Washington State and Oregon's legalization, we've not seen a huge uptake. We've seen a little bit of uptake similar to what we've seen in other states with medical marijuana legislation. When it comes to illegal drug usage, we see it more among males versus their female counterparts, as 11.6% compared to 6.9%. Of course, males were more likely to use marijuana, 9.6% versus 5%, but males and females had similar rates for stimulants, methamphetamine, and sedatives. Now, why do you think, and this is a question, I'm going to unmute everybody, and I want you guys to answer me. Why do you think methamphetamine has seen sort of equal usage across different demographics between males and females?
It's easy to get.
It's easy to get. Why else?
My uncle who used to use it, he said it's the only thing that truly helps you to be able to forget your memories.
Okay. Summer?
Stimulant, so it makes you happy, it gives you more emotion.
Okay. Anybody else?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I'm going to mute everybody again. One of the things that we've noticed as law enforcement, especially ones that worked in schools, was the use of methamphetamine to stay awake for studying. The pressure to perform among youth is at some of the highest levels I've ever seen it. Kids are expected to maintain a good social life, to be very active in their school, their extracurricular activities, to maintain good grades, and a heavy academic load so that you can get into a good school. And we put these horrendous, obnoxious, really expectations on our youth. And so they're using meth to stay awake, to continue to perform at these high levels. So that's another reason for the meth, which not many people know about, not many people, and fewer people think about. So I don't even know what I just did, but I lost my chat box. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so We did see some variation in ethnicities with drug use. The lowest was among Asians at 3.7%, 14.8% for people identifying by more than one race, 7.8% among Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, 12.7% among American Indians, Native Americans, or Alaskan Natives, 11.3% among African Americans, 9.2% among whites, and 8.3% among Hispanics. So just one of those things. You know, ethnicity does. Why do you guys think that ethnicity makes a difference?
Is your phone dead?
No, but my charger's fucking ring. I was scared.
You're gonna have to unmute yourself if you want to answer that. Sorry.
My thing is I can't really say why one ethnicity is more prone to doing certain drugs, other than the fact that, like if you look at it just like for our area, generally you associate, like meth use with young white males. You associate marijuana use, kind of with everybody. Opiates is kind of like, well, now it's everybody because the opioid epidemic has gotten ridiculous. But what I was going to say is what's really just the perception of it. I was talking to somebody that's been working in corrections for almost 30 years. Has worked at a variety of prisons everywhere from, she was actually on death row for a long time. And got an issue right now where we had like 6 African-American inmates all test positive for meth. And she asked me, she said, I'm not trying to be rude, but I thought meth was like a white person's drug. Crack's generally been the black man's drug. Meth, I was like, I guess it's changing. It's crazy, but right now the biggest thing we're seeing is just meth. It's eating everybody up, and it's ridiculous. I literally had an issue where we had, in 3 days, we had to take 4 people to the hospital, and from everything from hallucinations. There we go. Thank you. Another guy fell out and had a seizure because of some bad dope. And people are still continuing to do it because it's got such a stranglehold on them. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy. It's scary.
And one of the things we are seeing is, meth has the nickname of hillbilly heroin. It's easy to get to. It's easy to make. Anybody can make it. You can make it with very, very little room, very few ingredients. Unfortunately, one that has made a huge introduction is fentanyl, and all of the fentanyl derivatives, carfentanil, cardfentanil, fentanyl, and all these other variations. They're terrifying to me because they're so deadly. So, just understand, the next iteration of this text, I'm fairly certain we'll see different numbers relating to fentanyl. Let's talk about juvenile sex offenders now. This is a difficult topic. And I can tell you from my personal experience in dealing with juvenile sex offenders, most of the ones I've dealt with have been abused. I had to arrest a young man who sexually abused his 6-year-old nephew. A 12-year-old who raped another 12-year-old, raped and sodomized her. It was a pretty horrible case, actually. Come to find out, yes, both of the offenders had been abused. It's not uncommon in even adult sex offenders. Most of the sex offenders that are adolescents have abused someone their age or younger. But the one good note about it is that juvenile sex offenders have an incredibly low recidivism rate, meaning that they're not likely to do it again. Violent sex crimes affect the public opinion. They, unlike a lot of other crimes, we don't get desensitized to them. We get desensitized to murder. We get desensitized, unfortunately, to mass murder. What we don't get desensitized to, though, in my experience, is violent sex offenses. It's as shocking to the conscious and to the consciousness of the public every time. That doesn't change. A lot of times, though, when it comes to juveniles, much of the sexual behavior is concealed within the confines of the family, the community, and the school. And it doesn't get found out. So when we talk about the sex offender characteristics among juveniles, we look at 7 specific things. 11 specific things, my bad. The first is a history of severe family problems. If there's a lot of problems, severe problems in the home, you're going to see typically them acting out in some way. The second is separation from the parents. Third, placement away from home. Having been a victim of abuse, number 4. Number 5, social awkwardness. Unfortunately, a lot of times juveniles that commit sex offenses do so because they don't know, they're socially awkward. They don't know how to approach anyone, and they become sexually frustrated, especially with the buildup of hormones. That does not in any way excuse their behavior whatsoever, but it is useful in explaining it. And it also helps to explain why the recidivism rates are low. Number 6, academic and behavioral problems, just like every other juvenile offender. We look for academic and social and behavioral problems. Number 7 is poor peer relations. 8, social isolation. Again, that frustration, that not knowing how to deal with society. Number 9, poor impulse control. 10, a lower than average IQ. And 11 is psychopathology. Do they have psychopathic tendencies? One of the cases that I helped work, I couldn't be directly involved for quite a few reasons, and I'm not going to go into those tonight. But there are 3 things that we look for when it comes to psychopathology. We call them the Holy Trinity. And if you have an offender who commits these 3 offenses before the age of 16, more than likely they can be considered psychopaths. One of those is arson. Second is injury to animals and unprovoked injury to animals. And the last is sexual violence. And in one of these cases, that's what we saw. This was the act of the rape was the final of those 3 of the Holy Trinity. He hadn't been convicted because he was too young, but at the age of 6, he was found to have committed several arsons. From ages 7 until 12, he had killed several animals in front of witnesses. So it's not like this, he might have done it, but no, he had done it. And so the committal of the rape was the final. And so he was diagnosed, he was treated while he was incarcerated, and he has continued to seek treatment. So now we're going to talk about the gang delinquent. I know we talked about gangs last week. We've kind of beaten that dead horse, but it helps to understand it from a different perspective. what are some of the ways that we look at treatment possibilities, and, why do we care? Juveniles only make up a small portion of the gangs, of gang membership. Most of the females who are gang members join male gangs. They're involved in crime-related behaviors. They're involved in more crime-related behaviors than non-gang youth. So we understand that, being in a gang is one way or one explanation for criminal activity. And it does put them in a little bit of a different category when we're talking about different populations in juveniles, mostly because of that affiliation. And it can lead to a higher level of violence, let me put it that way. Another is the juvenile that is the violent offender. When we look at violent juveniles, we look at, those who've committed homicide, those who killed, chronic offenders, and the relationship to the violence itself. There were some that predicted we would see violent crime among juveniles skyrocket by 2010. In truth, that's not what we've seen. We've seen since the late 90s, we've seen an overall drop in violent crime among juveniles ages 10 to 17 specifically, but across the population. We've not seen violent crimes go up. We've seen a continuous or near continuous downward trend. We saw an uptick in 2014, but then it dropped back down. Gun control proponents attribute some of that to the increased gun laws and the lack of ability for juveniles to get guns. I disagree. I mean, you only have to look at Chicago to understand that gun laws really aren't working. Chicago has some of the toughest gun laws in the United States. Chicago also has the highest murder by gun rates in the United States. So yeah, it's not working. Now, there are 3 types of juveniles that commit violent acts. The first is the children who killed their parents. Typically, there is a history of abuse. The second is school shooters. And there's an attention on violence and bullying. And then chronic offenders. These are serious delinquent, violent offenders, hardcore delinquents, or career delinquents. Hyde did a study on these violent youth and noted 3 factors, tendencies, if you will, among these violent youth. First is that they're severely abused, and then they're pushed beyond their limits. That's one type of the violent offender. They get abused to the point that they act out. They internalize their anger to the point that they explode. The second is the severely mentally ill, the individuals who don't understand reality. They may or may not have a complete break from reality. And then the third is dangerously antisocial. This is where your psychopaths are going to come in, your sociopaths, especially your sociopaths, because they have no sense of conscience, no empathy. They don't understand anybody else's pain outside of their own. So let's talk now about the mentally ill juvenile. When we talk about them, understand, as with most other offenders across the criminal justice system, not just the juvenile system, but all criminal justice, many of those who are incarcerated right now or who face charges have some type of mental illness. Again, this is not said to explain away what they did, but it does contextualize it. It does provide some necessary context and understanding for their behaviors. You know, when we talk though about this group, you know, there are special needs youth that do offend. They could have a mental or physical condition requiring separation from general institutional populations and to receive some unique treatment. According to multiple studies, 65% of youth inside the juvenile justice system have diagnosable psychiatric or substance abuse disorders, and 75 with one disorder that meets diagnostic criteria for 2 or more disorders. That's going to be your kid with ADHD and OCD, or ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, children who are showing early signs of early onset schizophrenia, kids who are on the autism spectrum disorder, or are on the autism spectrum and have an autism spectrum disorder, which usually has co-occurring conditions like anxiety, ADHD, things like that. So many of them have issues that require treatment. 70% of juveniles that are under supervision have a mental disorder, and 66 suffer from dual disorders. We very rarely see among juveniles a juvenile that only has one disorder. You know, my oldest, he's ADHD. He has ADHD as the day is long. But, you know, he's medicated. He has coping mechanisms in place. My youngest son, on the other hand, you know, my oldest son, single disorder. He doesn't have anything else. My youngest son, though, he's on the autism spectrum. He has co-occurring ADHD and anxiety disorder. So, you know, it's not uncommon though nowadays to see kids that are getting diagnosed. And I don't know that these disorders are happening in a greater frequency, or we're just recognizing them more and paying more attention. Does that make sense to you guys? I can't see any of you, so I'm going to go with yes. Now let's talk about the homeless youth. That's not a group we talk about very often. One of my students at Truett, he spent high school living in his car. Really neat kid. I enjoy getting to talk with him. He comes from a broken home. Well, not a broken home. He never knew his dad, didn't know who his dad was. Mom had substance abuse issues. And so he scraped and saved and bought his own vehicle, and lived in his car. So, you know, homeless youth do happen. You know, the term homeless children and youth came from McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, Title 10, Part C of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Section 725. Now, when we think about homeless youth, they face some unique issues. Being homeless is incredibly disruptive. Even the threat of being homeless is disruptive. Have any of y'all ever had to face that, being homeless? Anybody?
No.
Good.
I mean, I don't know if you would consider it homeless. Well, I mean, I didn't technically have anywhere to go, but so car broke down. I was living in Athens. Then I lost my job, and then I lost my house. And then pretty much for a week there, I really didn't have anywhere to go. So I made the toughest decision I've ever made to go back to my hometown that I swore I'd never go to. And luckily I'm one of those people that had a good support system, but it's not like anybody gave anything to me. I mean, I had to pretty much, you know, make promises and then stand up to them. But within a day I had a job, within a day I had a car, and then I'd say within, 12 months, everything was sorted back out. And then I actually just closed on my first house about a month ago. But I mean, stuff can happen quick, especially even with this stuff going on today. I mean, all it takes, it's crazy to think about. Everything can be going good, but all it takes is just a vehicle tearing up, and then all of a sudden everything's in the toilet. So just my personal opinion, I advocate everybody have some kind of emergency fund, have some kind, because you never know when you're not going to be able to depend on somebody to get you out of a jam.
Yep.
And you definitely don't want to bury yourself in credit card debt. That's for sure.
Definitely. But Russ is so right. It becomes a cascade effect, and you get what's called a cascade failure. I use techno geek terms. Cascade failure is one of those. It's also an electrician's term. And it's a term I actually picked up when I was working on a task force. We were trying to protect some infrastructure. You'd be amazed at how much technology influences our infrastructure, our electrical network, our gas network, natural gas, phones, internet, all of our critical infrastructure, water systems. Most of it now is controlled digitally, and these are not air-gapped systems, meaning you can hack into them. And I got called in because I do have some tech experience, and I'm a cop. So I was on a task force helping try to stop it and then try to locate the perpetrators. We were successful, and nothing happened, but it could have been very, very, very bad. But the term cascade failure is when you have a hub, one little section that goes bad. And then, well, that section went bad, so these other two sections had to pick up the slack. Well, they weren't built to handle that, so they fail. And then the entire system begins to fail. It just grows and grows and grows. It's a snowball that turns into an avalanche. And that's how a lot of times it is. When I was between my junior and senior year of high school, my dad, the business he worked for went bankrupt. So he lost his job. Part of his job was also a place to live. So through no fault of my dad's, in less than a day, we had 60 days to find a place and move. In fact, I ended up, I had been invited to participate in Governor's Honors. I'd gone through all of the auditions and stuff and been selected as a voice major. And so I spent 6 weeks in Valdosta. Back then, you didn't have to pay. It was a completely free thing. So, that was what I did that summer. And while we lived in one place when I left for Governor's Honors, and then when I came back to a completely different home. Mom and Dad had found this place and they purchased it, and it's actually where they still live today, much to my chagrin because I still want them to move in with me. But anyway, so I mean, you can do everything right and still have things go completely sideways. And if you don't think that weighed on me as a 16-year-old kid, that, I literally didn't know if I was going to come back to a home, to a place to live. So, it's a pretty significant event especially for an adolescent. I mean, it's a significant event for an adult, but it's really, really hard on adolescents. And because you're kind of at the mercy of everybody else. Homeless youth do represent one of the highest groups for crime, because they're homeless. They tend to have to commit crimes in order to live. There's a close association between homelessness and victimization. Just like highest risk for crime is homeless youth, So is the highest risk for victimization. I think I've talked about it in this class. There's the myriad studies out there proving that the same exact issues that lead to someone becoming a victim are the ones that lead to them becoming an offender. So it only makes sense that homelessness is the same way. Youth offenders are more likely to experience homelessness than anybody else. If they're committing crimes, they tend to end up homeless, which leads to more crime. And so it becomes a cyclic abyss for them. And a big piece of the treatment puzzle for them is just ending that homelessness. Getting them a stable home life is huge, or a stable place to stay is really, really huge. And one of the big questions that we talk about is, is evidence-based practices. Unfortunately, substance abuse has become such a prevalent issue in society. We are continuing to develop new ways to work on it. One of those ways is drug courts. And we have to have youth drug courts as well. When we talk about their effectiveness, one thing that we do see is within a year, only 16% of those who successfully complete drug court get arrested for any type of serious offense. 28% after 2 years, but they tend to work best for high-risk offenders who get sent to prison. But we're seeing that they do reduce recidivism. They do actually help, especially among juveniles. So it is a big thing. It is a good thing. So, but that's all I have, ladies and gentlemen. And it's kind of good because I'm gonna let you guys go early. Those of you who have not submitted your critical thinking assignment, 11:59 p.m. 11:59 p.m. I cannot accept it late. So I need it 11:59 p.m. tonight, okay? Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to make sure that you have me counted as present in the class as Gracie. I think it's labeling me as Pixel 4 or something, but
well, yeah, you popped up as Gracie, and then Gracie went away.
It's on my laptop, and it was saying that I couldn't hear you, and so I had to download all this stuff, and I was like, and it wasn't letting me that, so I got on my phone.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, because I mean, you were there, then you went away, and I was like, and then Pixel 4 came, and I'm like,
yes, so that's me.
Tracy. Okay, yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm really glad you guys could all be here tonight for the live lecture. Like I said, next week is going to be a recording. It'll be in the YouTube channel. I will upload the link into the online classroom. I will upload the recording of this. It takes roughly an hour to 2 hours, depending on how my computer's feeling at the moment, to convert it so that I can upload the recording into the online classroom. But as soon as I can, I will. Check Microsoft Teams, and you will get to have a copy of all of the PowerPoints that I use. They are useful on the tests, I promise. Speaking of tests, your final exam, I don't have a single clue what's about to happen. I don't know. I do not know how we're going to do this. I am golden with y'all taking it online, but I don't know what that's going to be for the policy. I don't know. I don't know. I only know through the end of this week because that's all that they have announced. So we may actually be meeting in person next week. I don't know. If we are, cool. I get to see you guys next week. Otherwise, expect a recording. I will do the recording anyway. But yeah, so get your critical thinking assignments submitted. Russ, I know you had emailed me a copy of yours earlier. Try to submit it now. I forgot to change one little setting. Oopsie. My bad. But if you could try to submit that, I would really appreciate it because it's a whole lot easier when it's all submitted into the online classroom. again, you guys, thanks. It was great to talk with you guys and to hear your voices. So I will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Hasta la vista.
Mañana. Bye, Lydia.